I'm Peter Lee, and this is Newsbud's China Watch. This week, Asia after Trump, the post-American age. On April 7, Xi Jinping and Donald Trump will meet at Mar-a-Lago. Xi Jinping will be asking himself, what does he want me to do on North Korea? What does he want me to do about trade? And, most importantly, is this guy still going to be around in 2 months? Impeachment is a political affair, and the rule of thumb is if the president's popularity dips to 30%, he can be impeached for anything. Trump's in the mid-30s right now and trending downward. Trump has promised a tough meeting with Xi Jinping, presumably to show he's still the man in charge and to get a boost in the polls. Well, if China's not going to solve North Korea, we will. That is all I'm telling you, Trump told the Financial Times. Despite Trump's tough talk, I think it's pretty clear he would like China's help to get a win on North Korea instead of blowing up the place himself. Xi Jinping may be inclined to oblige. I hope so. In the 21st century, friction is the default setting in U.S.-China relations, and under democratic administrations in particular, it's a cherished objective. Having an American president who needs China and is willing to deal with China is a rare window of opportunity, and I suspect Xi Jinping will make the most of it. As a personal matter, I should say I am guardedly in favor of Trump-style transactional great power diplomacy to obtain results in the Middle East, Afghanistan, and with North Korea, where the Clinton-Obama team settled for endless can-kicking and posturing instead of engaging Russia and China to actually help solve these problems. Of course, if diplomacy a la Trump means he mishandles the brinksmanship with China and North Korea to the point that the U.S. ends up attacking North Korea, then I'm not in favor. According to the reliably anti-Trump New York Times, Trump-China policy is pretty much in the hands of Jared Kushner, and Team Trump is underprepared for the Xi Jinping meeting. According to the reliably anti-Trump Washington Post, Trump-China policy is pretty much in the hands of Jared Kushner, and Team Trump is underprepared for the Xi Jinping meeting, though behind the scenes, Trump-China policy is apparently guided by, wait for it, Henry Kissinger. Let's see how this turns out. Trumpismo has changed the geostrategic landscape, largely by default. The Trump worldview appears to be geared to great power diplomacy. In other words, dealing with our designated competitors/adversaries, China and Russia, instead of devoting our full efforts to constructing anti-China and anti-Russia containment coalitions with our various buddies. This raises the delicate issue of the role of America's friends and allies while all this great power deal-making is going on. Increasingly, the smaller nations have to act on the assumption that the United States is with them, against them, both, or neither. In other words, they have to set their own course. One place the U.S. has been able to sustain the traditional U.S. coalition for now is East Asia. The Tillerson Mattis team has kept U.S. allies South Korea and Japan on board for whatever's cooking for North Korea. South Asia is another story. India, which of course is not a treaty ally, seems to be on its own under Trump, as the U.S. is quietly accommodating Russia and China for their help in getting to an endgame in Afghanistan. That's a big change from the Obama administration, which believed, unrealistically in my view, that a partnership with India would solve America's Afghanistan problem, its Pakistan problem, its China problem, and its Asia problem all at once. What we have now is an interesting situation where America appears to have stepped back so the world can get a preview of how the battle for Asian supremacy will be fought between India and China in the 21st century. Asia for the Asians. Imagine that. And as India and China flex their superpower muscles, they're both acting like jerks, just like the Russians and Americans did. Imagine that too. Happily, to date, the war between India and China is being fought primarily with dollars and acronyms. OBOR, BRF, CPEC, BIMSTEC. At present, it looks like China, with its greater economic weight, is overcoming India's home field advantage in most of the flashpoints. Instead of India uniting the region by turning the anti-Pakistan terrorism crank, China is seducing the region by throwing around money and the possibility of economic development through its acronym number one, OBOR, the One Belt, One Road Infrastructure Project. One Belt, One Road OBOR seeks to recreate the continental and maritime Silk Roads linking medieval China with Asia, Europe, and Africa, this time with a network of highways, railroads, pipelines, ports, and power plants with a nominal price tag of $1 trillion and a few extra wrinkles. The wrinkles that concern India involve extension of Chinese economic and military influence into South Asia. The best-known OBOR element is the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, known, of course, as acronym number 2, CPEC. CPEC has a price tag of $46 billion and is meant to secure the future of Pakistan and thereby secure the future of China in South Asia. So, India hates it. The CPEC is designed to boost Pakistan's economy, solve its energy woes, and improve its security situation. India is keen on none of these things. Then, add the fact that China leased Gwadar Port, which is on the Indian Ocean at the southern terminus of the CPEC, for 43 years. It's leased for civilian operation, and it looks like the Chinese Navy doesn't need to call there now since it already uses an existing Pakistan Navy port a few hours down the coast at Ormara. But 43 years from now? Who knows? In the short term, expect Gwadar to have some kind of Chinese military presence, at least Chinese Marines to protect the installation, maybe as many as 10,000. Pakistan also hopes to use the CPEC to tighten its hold over its unhappy southern province of Balochistan by altering its demographics and economics to decrease the intensity of the local rebellion and also reduce opportunities for Indian mischief. Finally, the CPEC enters Pakistan through Gilgit-Baltistan, a territory that Pakistan controls but India claims as part of disputed Kashmir. So, the CPEC is a heap of negatives for India. To solidify China's position as the leader in Asia's economic integration, Xi Jinping has announced a Grand Asian Infrastructure Conference in Beijing on May 14th and 15th. Acronym number 3, BRF, the Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation. Everybody's invited, including India. It looks like everybody's going, except for India, maybe. Whether or not India goes is still a matter of debate in India's media and perhaps inside its ruling circles. If India does go, it'll be just for show. Indian Prime Minister Modi, with his confidence augmented by his convincing wins in India's state elections, is doubling down on his search for ways to isolate Pakistan and exclude China from South Asia, despite his recent setbacks. India is now pushing another regional grouping, acronym number 4, BIMSTEC, the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation. Call it BIMSTEC. It includes the majority of India's neighbors like Burma, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka, and also a couple of landlocked countries nowhere near the Bay of Bengal, Nepal, and Bhutan. And it pointedly does not include Pakistan or China. Well, India might be able to keep China out of BIMSTEC, but it's not having much luck keeping China out of the BIMSTEC countries. There's another OBOR acronym, number 5, BCIM, the Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar Corridor, which includes 2 BIMSTEC members, Bangladesh and Myanmar, as well as India itself. That's the only Chinese OBOR project that involves India. I think the Indian attitude is, if China is stupid enough to build a road for us to connect Calcutta with Bangladesh and Burma, go ahead. And there's OBOR port facilities in BIMSTEC member Sri Lanka, and a new OBOR railroad project for BIMSTEC member Nepal. China pledged over $8 billion to Nepal. That's equivalent to 40% of Nepal's GDP. In contrast, India came up with $317 million. Virtually every neighbor of India has climbed into bed with China. Indian response tends toward sour grapes wishful thinking, along the lines of, these projects are rip-offs. China alienates its partners in the long term, and OBOR is just an expensive pretext for China to conduct a strategic encirclement of India. It is true that many of the Chinese investment agreements with the eye-popping numbers in the billions appear to be preemptive, mainly meant to lock in the other side and occupy what's called the commanding heights in a country's economy so others can't claim them. If and when it comes down to actually doing the project, there's some hard, unpleasant bargaining in China's favor, with the danger of debt peonage if the projects don't pan out and the host country is crushed by unserviceable loans. And some projects haven't panned out already, like the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, resulting in embarrassing renegotiations to convert $1 billion of Sri Lankan debt into $1 billion of Chinese equity. The flagship Gwadar port of the CPEC has the potential to become another white elephant, unless China makes a major political and financial commitment to transform it into a viable economic center. However, China appears to be evolving beyond the simple smash-and-grab mindset that characterized its early forays into Africa and Asia. In particular, the PRC's ability to keep itself from getting kicked out of Burma, which it ruthlessly exploited with the junta before democratic reforms and an opening to the U.S., shows a certain deftness in navigating the choppy social and political waters of a not-too-friendly state, as well as China's skills in manipulating and exploiting the various ethnic armies up by Burma's China border. And India has set the bar pretty low when it comes to good behavior by an overbearing regional power. India's regional hijinks over time include invading Bangladesh, then East Pakistan, to facilitate its independence from West Pakistan, annexing Sikkim, fomenting and bungling a disastrous civil war in Sri Lanka that claimed 100,000 lives, and messing with the internal politics of Nepal again and again and again. Lest you think this is all ancient history, in 2015, India imposed an undeclared blockade of fuel oil to Nepal for 4 months, inflicting major economic and humanitarian suffering on Nepal as it was struggling to dig out from a catastrophic earthquake, just so India could get its way in the dispute over the constitutional rights of the ethnic Indian minority in Nepal. Unsurprisingly, Nepal was driven into the arms of China. Embarrassingly, India also failed to secure Bangladesh as an ally for its anti-China alignment. Bangladesh's pro-Indian government rebuffed India's proposal for a 25-year mutual defense treaty and instead opted for a lesser Memorandum of Understanding on defense matters. Bangladesh's attitude presumably had a lot to do with the fact that in 2016, China signed agreements for $24 billion in investments with Bangladesh. So, Bangladesh turned around and parlayed India's fear of China's influence into a $500 million credit just for signing the unsatisfactory, to India, Memorandum of Understanding. Clearly, straddling the fence between India and China has become a profitable way of life for South Asian nations, and that's where most of them have ended up. If a government swings too much toward one country, trouble often follows. Currently, the brightest spot for India is, of all places, the Maldives. The Maldives are the smallest member of the South Asian family of nations, but even so, they are the target of intense and expensive competition between China and India. I don't expect viewers to know exactly where the Maldives are unless they're planning a very expensive honeymoon, but they are a handsome collection of atolls south of Sri Lanka. The Maldives are considered to be a strategic asset because they're out in the Indian Ocean. China targeted the Maldives with an airport expansion and the promise of a big bridge. In addition, Saudi Arabia had agreed to back China's Maldives play and help solidify its position as China's preferred Middle East energy provider over archenemy Iran by offering to spend billions to develop one of the Maldive atolls as a tourist destination, keying off China's OBOR concept. However, the pro-Chinese president, President Yamin, is apparently so corrupt he's unable to keep a lid on political opposition even when Saudi Arabia was promising to pump $10 billion into a country of only 400,000 people. Saudi Arabia's King Salman, his yacht, and 1,500-person entourage and 500 tons of luggage were expected in the Maldives this month as part of Salman's Asian tour to seal the deal. But he canceled at the last minute. Was an outbreak of bird flu responsible, as officials explained? Or was King Salman responding to a tip from India, another important Saudi customer, that President Yamin is going down, the India-backed opposition is poised to take power, and any deals made by the China-backed administration are going to evaporate? Overall, I'd say China has the upper hand in South Asia for now, thanks to superior economic power, aggressive execution, clumsy overreach by Modi, and, somewhere down the list, an assist from the Trump administration. But India is still the big dog in South Asia, and China has yet to prove its geostrategic plays down there will generate the economic returns that justify the expense and pay off interest and principal on those billions of dollars of loans. Modi's going to be around for a while, and India will continually probe and exploit weaknesses in China's OBOR strategy. And Trump, or his successor, will find plenty of reasons to gang up with India and against China once more when America's immediate problems have been resolved. So, it's game on in Asia, a game between India and China that will cost trillions, go on for decades, and hopefully not culminate in a pan-Asian war. Finally, Paris has been rocked by the killing of a Chinese man by French police. On March 27, police went to the apartment of Liu Xiaoyao on a domestic disturbance call. Liu, who had lived in France for 20 years but was still a Chinese citizen, was working on dinner with a pair of scissors in his hand when the police broke down the door and shot him to death in front of his family. According to his family. According to the police, Liu charged him with the scissors, and it was self-defense. This triggered several nights of demonstrations, both spontaneous and organized, protesting a culture of police disrespect and ill treatment of French Chinese. They were also marked by some violent clashes. The violence apparently was not instigated by anarchists, radicals, or whatnot, but by relatively militant young French Chinese. It looks like the French police overreacted, arresting more than 36 people and beating and injuring several demonstrators who weren't involved in the violence. The French security service then put its hoof in it by preparing a secret report, which was promptly leaked to the press, that Chinese government agents and the Chinese mafia had infiltrated the demonstrations to manipulate them for their various nefarious purposes. The young French Chinese indignantly rebutted the accusation that they were puppets of dark forces and insisted they only wanted their full rights as French citizens. It seems likely that the Chinese embassy did send people to monitor the demonstrations, but it does not seem plausible they would take the risk of playing an active role. The Chinese mafia angle, according to the reporting of journalist Duan Bui, referred to one Cao Le Gros, in other words, Fatty Cao, a Chinese hood who takes the role of champion of French Chinese abused by the police, and had met with Liu's family and publicized the killing and subsequent demonstrations on his WeChat. PRC domestic media covered the demonstrations, which culminated with a memorial service on April 2nd, attended by 6,000 people. I expect the PRC was happy to point out that the West is not a pure paradise of freedom, and Chinese have to stand up for their rights. Over there. Whether the CCP feels comfortable airing videos inside China of young French Chinese people demanding justice, vérité, dignité, in other words, justice, truth, and dignity, is another matter entirely. That's all for this week. Thanks for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, go to newsbud.com, where you'll find exclusive content available only to the Newsbud community. I'm Peter Lee for Newsbud's China Watch.
For just a small subscription fee, you can become a member of the Newsbud community and help keep this website running. Your subscription will provide you with full community access to exclusive content, including videos and articles from Newsbud's team of experts and analysts, as well as a members-only monthly newsletter from Newsbud's founder, Sibel Edmonds. Sign up today for full access at newsbud.com.